he narrated, and Ruth explained that ever since they were children, he always suffered because he couldn't play with the other children. This was because he was very tall, and his serious face always scared them. All the children teased and bothered him, leaving him always alone. However, the only one who was always there for him, no matter how he was his sister. Because of this, he decided to leave everything to be with his sister because he couldn't live without the person who always accompanied him and gave him the strength to live. Manisha began to cry because she didn't know how her brother felt. Ruth apologized to her because he thought that his brother was there out of burden or responsibility. Ruth said that he didn't do it because of that, but out of gratitude for all the love his sister had given him. They then hugged. Ruth and Manisha thanked Luna because, thanks to her, Manisha was able to decide to speak up and express all that she felt. At that moment, someone knocked on the door, and Ruth wondered who it was. When he opened the door, he was surprised to see Nin standing there. The girl greeted him and said she had come to visit him because she had a few days off. Ruth was surprised that Kylas had let her go for a few days, but Nin admitted that it wasn't the hero who allowed her to leave because she was no longer part of that group. She even said that there was no longer a hero group because they had all separated. This news shocked Ruth greatly, so Nin explained that they hadn't been able to complete a single labyrinth since Ruth left, because when they fought monsters, they couldn't hurt them. Kylas wondered why his blows didn't have the same impact, and now using their abilities consumed more shield. For a moment, they began to understand that Ruth provided them with shields and increased their strength, but they refused to believe this. So, using his strongest ability, Kylas attacked a monster and managed to defeat it, although he had to deliver an extra blow to fully eliminate it. His companions informed him that several portals opened and more monsters came because they couldn't eliminate the monster quickly. Angry, Kylas said that they couldn't retreat because he didn't accept defeat and mistakes. Then, he tried to summon his magical abilities, but he no longer had any magical power. The monster attacked him and destroyed his shield. Kylas fell to the ground and began to feel real pain without any protection, which terrified him because he had hardly ever felt such pain before. He started running, but the monster chased him and struck his back, breaking several of his bones. I will not lie, it was satisfying to see how he suffered because he underestimated our Ruth. Kylas fell to the ground in pain and couldn't move. Meanwhile, he cried in fear because he didn't want to die there. One of his companions saw this and decided to run towards the hero and carry him out of the labyrinth. A few days later, Kylas, wrapped in bandages, read the news, very angry because now his reputation was terrible. Not only had he fled from the dungeon, but he was also injured and blamed the girls for being dodge tanks. Nin said that the fault wasn't with the girls, but with him. He hadn't trained for too long, and he was very thin because he only drank at the guild. Besides that, he only relied on one ability to attack and didn't focus on using others. Kylas complained that at least it had worked until now, but Nin said he should have already known the reason. That ability used his shield to enhance his attack, and when Ruth was with them, even though he didn't know it, he provided protection similar to what he had as a tank. Knowing that Ruth had almost 10,100,000 shields, that's why when Ruth lost his maximum shield, Kylas could unleash his ability with the greatest power he had ever achieved. Kylas was angry because he said he had achieved it himself without anyone's help, and he didn't agree that the group was different just because they lost a tank. An angry Nin said that she had already decided to leave the group, and all the other girls felt the same way and decided to leave him because he only blamed others without realizing his own mistakes. Nin then explained how everything happened and apologized to Ruth because none of the group realized all that he contributed to them since they only saw him as an ordinary tank, and now without him, they realized all that he helped with. For this, she apologized to him, and Ruth said that it wasn't necessary because he didn't fully understand his abilities either, but it helped him because he had improved a lot and now he truly recognized it. Nin then decided to change the topic, and Ruth introduced the two girls. Nin greeted them and said she came from the church to take care of the garden, so it's likely she would stay for some time. Ruth was surprised to hear this and explained that there was no place to stay in this village, so adventurers usually stayed in empty houses. Nin was surprised to hear this, but Manisha decided she would stay with them, so she offered her room. But Ruth explained that Nin was the daughter of a duke and from a high aristocratic family. Besides, they were quite connected to the church, so along with the girl's healing abilities, they considered her a saint. Then Ruth said he would leave his room because it was simpler and she could feel more comfortable. Meanwhile, he would rest in the living room. Nin was happy to see Ruth's room and said she wouldn't mind sharing the bed with him. Ruth felt embarrassed hearing the girl's suggestion. But then they were interrupted because someone knocked on the door and called loudly for Ruth, who went out and saw that it was Phil, who was shouting that the garden was in danger because a monster they had never seen before had appeared. Ruth quickly went out with Nin and Luna. Upon arriving at the garden, they saw that the monster had caused a lot of damage, and Nin used her magic to remove the dark magic layer so they could identify it. Ruth was shocked because he had never seen a monster like this. It seemed that dark magic had completely taken over the animal. Some soldiers attacked but failed, and when the wolf tried to attack them, Ruth decided to use provocation. The wolf started following him, and Ruth asked Nin and Luna to use healing and protective spells while he distracted the wolf. Ruth began to withstand the attacks, and the soldiers took the opportunity to strike, but they were thrown back by the wolf's assault. Ruth absorbed all the damage from them, and the girls used their magic to heal him. Ruth told them not to be afraid to attack because, with his ability, he would absorb the damage from everyone, and they didn't need to worry about losing their shields. The soldiers were impressed with this ability and attacked, causing the wolf to start fleeing. Ruth was worried because the wolf was heading towards the village. Then Luna used her magic to create a stone wall that crashed into the wolf. Ruth decided that this was the moment, as he would use the 20,000 damage points he had received. He leaped towards the wolf and used his vital conversion ability to deliver a blow with his shield. The impact was so strong that an explosion of light erupted, preventing anyone from seeing anything. When the explosion ended, Ruth was worried because his attack was so strong it created a crater in the ground and destroyed most of the garden. Nevertheless, the leader of the soldiers approached Ruth and congratulated him because, thanks to him, they were able to defeat the monster without losing a single person. After defeating it, Ruth was surprised because the wolf was only level C, yet it fought with the strength of a level A monster. He then approached to see what they had gotten from the monster and realized it had 2 magic runes. This was very strange to him because usually they only have 1 rune. Luna commented that the runes were very similar to those used to create homunculi. Nin also observed that the wolf had a scar on its side, as if someone had forcibly inserted the 2nd rune. Ruth realized that someone had intentionally created this monster. Nin said this was very strange because it was known that creating homunculi for combat was completely forbidden. Ruth thought that this might be the work of someone from a neighboring country, as he didn't believe this was just a common experiment. Rather, someone created it with a specific purpose and sent it here. However, for now, they couldn't do much and would just inform the town's owner about what had happened. The next day, Ruth read the newspaper but didn't see much news about the monster that appeared yesterday. At that moment, his younger sister came and asked him to read the news to her. Ruth agreed, and they read about various things. There were rumors that a labyrinth might appear near the village, which would greatly help boost the economy. Ruth also read about Kylas, who had gone back into the labyrinth after recovering from his injuries. Manisha commented that Nin didn't like Kylas because of how he treated Ruth badly. Ruth said that it was true. Then they had a somewhat awkward conversation because Manisha asked if he didn't realize that Nin was interested in him. Ruth admitted that he knew, but he tried not to get involved in romantic affairs because it could end up being too complicated. It would affect his performance as an adventurer and in the labyrinth because he didn't want to take too many risks and he didn't want to make the people who loved him suffer. Manisha responded that he shouldn't think like that and should give himself a chance to be happy. Even so, she hoped that if he found a girl, he wouldn't forget her or distance himself from her. Ruth promised that no matter what happened, he would never let himself be away from her. A few days later, Phil gathered the adventurers and the village guards because a monster had appeared around their area. It wasn't clear how the monster got there, but it was most likely that it had escaped from a labyrinth. So, they had to deal with it. Nin noticed that Ruth had a new sword, and his shield was now much shinier. Ruth explained to Nin and Luna that the sword was given to him by a blacksmith who made it specifically for Ruth to use. Besides being very good for fighting, the sword could also be enchanted. Ruth could use elemental spells, but since he was a tank, those spells weren't very useful for attacking. However, with this sword, he just needed to send the element to the runes on the sword, and the whole sword would change to the same element, whether it was fire or water, giving him more options to defeat monsters by exploiting their weaknesses. The girls were amazed, but an adventurer mocked him, saying that the sword was too much for someone who was only ranked F. Ruth knew that the young man was ranked C and didn't pay him much attention. Ruth preferred to impress those who thought he was very weak rather than end up disappointing them if they thought he was very strong. Luna was upset by how they treated Ruth, but then Nin commented that it happened because Ruth didn't want to update his rank. If he did, he could even earn the title of Royal Guardian, a saint. The adventurers were surprised to hear what Nin said, and Nin admitted that Ruth always refused to level up. Ruth told them that he didn't want to rank up because the higher his rank, the more often he would be called by the guild, and he knew he became an adventurer to help his sister. As they were talking, they heard a noise from the forest, and the monster appeared behind them. The monster used the ability to become invisible and started attacking them. Ruth ran and used provocation to draw the monster's attention, then ordered the soldiers to attack it. Everyone started attacking it, both the adventurers and the guards, causing damage to it while Ruth held off its attacks. However, he began to feel something strange because the monster didn't try to dodge or attack anyone, but instead acted like a tank like him. At that moment, he understood, but it was too late because 2 more monsters appeared from behind and attacked several soldiers, then surrounded them. Phil didn't know what to do because there were more of them than expected, and they had no place to go. Ruth encouraged him by saying that he was the leader and they would find a way. After composing himself, Ruth decided to provoke all three monsters simultaneously. The monsters began attacking him while the adventurers worried because facing three monsters at once could be very dangerous. Ruth ordered them to handle one monster, and Luna used her magic to attack, as did the other adventurers, who finally managed to defeat one monster. Ruth endured the attacks from the second monster and decided to use his sword. With his sword enchanted with fire since the monsters were weak to that element, Ruth delivered a single slash, and the monster fell to the ground burning. Ruth let the guards handle that monster, then he turned his attention to the last of the three. Using his shield to block the attacks, he drew the monster's attention while Luna immobilized it with her water magic, and Nin used wind magic to wound it. Ruth seized this opportunity to leap with his fire-enchanted sword and deliver the final blow, successfully defeating the last monster. After the entire battle, the soldiers rejoiced because they managed to win in that manner. They acknowledged that it was all thanks to Ruth. The adventurers also approached to apologize for underestimating him, but now after seeing him fight, they realized how impressive he was, as he wasn't fazed in such a situation. Ruth said that it was natural for them to think that way because adventurers are classified by level, and he understood why they thought he was weak. At that moment, the monsters began disappearing underground, leaving only ruins behind. Everyone was shocked, and Ruth said that it was strange because monsters that disappear like this are usually in labyrinths. Then Nin called him over because she saw an entrance to a labyrinth. This news greatly surprised Ruth. That night, the entire village gathered to celebrate the news about the labyrinth, hoping that with the labyrinth, the village's economy would rise and prosper. Everyone celebrated, but Ruth was not as happy, especially when a drunk soldier approached to invite Manisha for a drink. So he took her away to talk a little. Luna didn't understand why Ruth didn't seem as happy as everyone else. Then Nin came and explained that it was normal because although the labyrinth could bring a good economy, it could also bring problems. If the monsters inside were not eliminated, they would come out like they did that afternoon, putting people in danger. Luna said that's why there are soldiers and adventurers. Nin knew that was true, but it was another problem because with a labyrinth nearby, the number of adventurers would increase, and many of them would try to take advantage of the local girls, so it wouldn't be surprising if some of them were interested in Manisha and Luna. At that moment, Ruth returned and said that the only way to control and prevent such things was with a clan because the kingdom recognized them, and the clans were responsible for organizing the adventurers so they wouldn't be free or independent. This was very concerning to Ruth because he couldn't imagine what would happen if something happened to his sister. Nin said he didn't need to worry because she would try to help him, and as they talked, Phil came over and jumped into Ruth's arms because it seemed the alcohol was starting to affect her. A week later, Ruth was on duty patrolling the streets and preventing fights. Nin joined him and said that many adventurers had come, and the village was growing. As they walked, Ruth was greeted by many people thanking him for helping them over the past few days. Nin was surprised to see Ruth's commitment, and just then, they heard rumors of a fight. Ruth ran over and realized that the ones about to fight were two Ranka adventurers. Each of them was from a different clan, and before they could fight, Ruth intervened and said they were scaring the people. They must respect the people. The adventurers said that he should order one clan to stay and the others to leave. Ruth replied that if they were going to fight each other, no clan would be accepted. When one of his companions tried to attack Ruth in revenge, he stopped him effortlessly and threatened them, saying that if they tried anything again, he would show his strength. Ruth reminded them that if they wanted to show their strength, they had to face him first. The adventurers and their frightened companions apologized for their behavior and quickly changed their minds, now interested in having him be a part of their clan. Ruth refused to join any clan and hoped there would be no more problems with them. Although in his mind he knew that he would have a lot of work because many adventurers were coming, and initially, he wanted to be part of such a clan but couldn't do it while taking care of his sister. Later, Ruth was called to headquarters because they needed him. Ruth decided to go and was received by Buey, who told him that the city lord had talked to them about the labyrinth and gave him two options. The first option was for Ruth to become the clan leader and be responsible for the adventurers entering or leaving the labyrinth, as well as being able to protect the city. Ruth was surprised because it was quite a high position, but he didn't feel he could accept it because his mission was to heal his sister. Will understood, but the people in the city didn't want an outsider because they knew Ruth and had seen his attitude for years. Additionally, he had become an example for the entire city, and they saw him as the best candidate to lead the clan. Will said that if he didn't accept the position, then the second option was to, along with a group of adventurers, be in charge of destroying the labyrinth. Ruth said that it would ruin the city's economy and wouldn't uplift the city. Will knew, but like many other labyrinths in the kingdom, they had become uncontrollable, and instead of helping, they started to harm the city, so these were the two options they had even though he didn't want to choose but had no other choice. He said he didn't have to decide immediately. After leaving headquarters, Ruth kept thinking about it, then saw two people fighting and tried to intervene, but they said a simple adventurer shouldn't give them orders. Ruth knew that to maintain order in the city, he had to become the clan leader. At that moment, Luna came calling him anxiously because Manisha was very weak at home. Ruth ran, and when he arrived at the room, Kylas was there saying that his sister was fine and just a little weakened. Ruth was relieved to see her okay and then knew what he had to do. If he chose to become the clan leader, he wouldn't be able to leave the city and the chance to heal Manisha would be impossible. Therefore, he gathered Nia and Luna, and after explaining the situation, he asked them to help him destroy the labyrinth because he preferred to save his sister rather than become the clan leader. Luna decided to ask if, as the clan leader, he couldn't appoint someone to be in charge when he was not in the city so that he could go and destroy the labyrinth without affecting the city's leadership. Ruth saw this as an option but didn't trust anyone to take on that responsibility. Luna said that she could take care of it and Nia would agree because she was even thinking of leaving her position as a saint to join. Ruth was surprised to see that both of them were very interested in helping him. Nin said that everyone in the village wanted to help him because he always protected them, so this would be a way to make him better. Manisha also came out of her room with Jigga's help and said that she also agreed because like all the other girls, she loved this village and if there was a way to make the village grow and become better for everyone, then she agreed and there would be no problem because one day she would recover. Ruth was happy to see so many people willing to help him and decided that he would lead the clan, protect his village, and also save his younger sister. The next day, Ruth walked though still remembering what he had talked about with his sister and with Nin. Because of this promise, he was determined to defeat the labyrinth and save his sister while also leading the village. But now he was heading to an adventurer's camp because he received news that his old group was calling him to talk to him. This somewhat surprised him, but he went to find out what they needed. When he arrived at the camp, he was greeted by Lily and his twin brother as well as a knight who came from the church. Everyone introduced themselves, and Luna also did because they didn't know her. Then they invited him into the tent where Kylas was. Nin was angry to see him and angrily approached the hero because she didn't believe that he was able to call Ruth after all that was said. Ruth calmed her down by saying that he had forgotten everything and then approached the young man asking why he called him because he didn't believe it was to congratulate him on having a new sword. Of course not. Kylas explained that the day before he was with his group in the labyrinth and met a guard who had consciousness, something very strange because in all the previous labyrinths he had never seen anything like it. This guard turned out to be very strong and agile causing the wounds he currently had. Therefore, he asked Ruth to continue the mission while he couldn't. Ruth was surprised and Kylas said that he knew what his intention was with that stone so he hoped he could conquer the labyrinth and save his sister. Now he knew that Ruth was the one keeping his team alive. Ruth was surprised to know this and accepted the responsibility of the labyrinth even though he was told that he would go with Lilia and the others. As he turned to leave, Claus called him because he wanted to apologize for all his bad actions and how he treated him, but now he hoped for the best and hoped he wouldn't lose his life against that monster. As he left there, Ruth went with the whole group to the labyrinth where there was a Baruth rune on the ground. Luna asked in amazement what it was and it was explained that it was a transportation rune that would take them to the first floor of the labyrinth. A few seconds later they disappeared and arrived at a very different place which surprised Luna because there was even a sun. Ruth explained that this was just an illusion and they must not be complacent, although they could not return through the same rune because the rune had disappeared. He explained that to leave, they needed to find similar runes or, in Lily's case, Lily could travel between the labyrinth floors they had previously visited. Ruth also asked Nin to demonstrate the escape ability Nin used. Nin used a mantra that Luna recognized and decided to try, successfully replicating the same mantra on the first attempt, which surprised the whole group, including Ruth and us. At that moment, they felt a strong essence and realized that there were 3 chameleons KKS that would attack them. Then, Ruth organized the team for each to take positions, and he took the front position, provoking one of the monsters while one of the twins and the knight held the other. They all fought together. After a few seconds, they managed to defeat all the monsters. However, from another part of the labyrinth, a guard observed them and was very curious to know who they were. Ruth, along with his group, used the rune to go to the next floor, where they were informed that it was there where they last met the guard. However, at that moment they were attacked by 2 dinosaur-shaped monsters which they managed to avoid. Ruth was surprised that the monsters were so fast because, in another part of the labyrinth, the monsters were not that fast. He wondered if this effect was caused by the guard. Then, he asked some of his companions to search for magic circles while he would handle the monsters. Nin and Luna went to search, while Ruth and the knight along with Lily fought. The guard observed from a distance how they managed to pass through floor after floor and was impressed with the decisions made by Ruth and us, so the whole group managed to reach the 9th floor, which made the guard happy because he hoped they would soon reach the 10th floor where they could meet. After a while, Ruth rested with his group and decided to thank them for supporting him even though this mission was very selfish. The girls said they didn't mind because they knew he was doing it to save his brother. Then, Nin walked towards the transportation circle and invited Ruth to leave because they still didn't have certainty and had to be together to defeat the guard. Upon reaching the last floor, the atmosphere was much darker. Then the guard appeared, very happy to see them there, and Ruth asked why they had seen him on the 5th floor before. The guard explained that he did not expect the adventurers to be so strong and decided to wait until they were on the last floor because there they did not need to hold back. Then, he introduced himself as Marius, the labyrinth guard, and informed them that he would use his original powers. Ruth quickly reacted to the attack and was surprised because when he held off the attack, his arm hurt because of the power Marius used. Marius was also impressed that Ruth could withstand his blow. Ruth tried to negotiate with him, but the guard refused and only wanted to fight. Then, Ruth told his group that they had to fight with all their might. The twins along with the knight attacked Marius, but they did not succeed in hurting him because he held off every attack, no matter where it came from. Marius praised their coordination and decided to fight with all his might. He gathers his strength, then summons his maximum power and begins to transform into his true form as a monster. Then, he warns that they must use their abilities to escape if they do not want to die. There, Marius transforms into a skeletal form and begins to scream, frightening all present. Ruth is slightly scared, but he remembers that he is here for his brother and decides not to give up on anything. So, he decides to use provocation and starts to withstand the monster's attacks. Meanwhile, Lily uses magic and manages to inflict some damage with her sword strikes. The knight asks Ruth to take turns attacking with provocation so that he does not receive all the damage. Ruth agrees, although surprised, as one direct blow from the monster could end his life. Then, he organizes the whole team and recalls the strategy they agreed upon before setting out because they already knew this would be a long battle. Therefore, they decide to use Ruth's shield to protect themselves, and to wait until Ru loses enough shield so that he can use vital conversion and inflict the greatest damage on the monster. This is their strategy to defeat it. Lily succeeds in attacking and injuring the monster, but she also suffers the consequences. Luna tries to help her, but Nin stops her, saying that they are magic support and that although it is difficult to see their friends suffer, they must be very strong to be able to support them with their magic. Luna understands, and they begin to heal the others. Ruth sees that he has lost 30,000 points from his shield, so he will use vital conversion. He leaps to attack Marius, but Marius spins and attacks him. Ruth does not have time to block the attack, but at that moment Luna manages to protect him with her magic. Ruth thanks her and then takes advantage of the moment to unleash vital conversion. The impact hits the monster and creates an explosion throughout the area. Everyone wonders if the fight is over, but Marius reappears, surprising Nin because the monster is still alive after the attack. Ruth knows that he has managed to injure the monster, so he is confident that one more attack at the same level can defeat it. The monster then begins to summon power runes and creates a giant stone above them to attack the group. Ruth uses his shield to protect them and does not cause much damage, but Lily falls to the ground as her shield is depleted. At the same time, the knight is hit by the monster and thrown to the ground. Ruth approaches him and the knight says that he is okay, but his hands tremble without much strength. Ruth begins to think about what he can do because he is not the type of person to prioritize selfishness over others' lives. So, he decides to order the group to prepare to retreat while he holds off Marius' attack. Nin screams angrily at him for that order, as they cannot retreat after coming this far. Ruth answers that he is the leader of the group and will not risk their lives. Then, the knight appears beside him and says that he knows he made that decision when he saw him lying on the ground, but now he is there ready to fight by his side and if necessary die to achieve the goal. Nin protests while crying that he cannot ask them to surrender. The hero withstands the monster's attack and remembers his younger sister as he promised to save her, and his whole life is dedicated to it. Then he decided he wouldn't give up. Lily decided to join her sister in a fusion and began attacking the monster while the heroes provoked it, just like knights, while Nin and Luna cared for and assisted them with their magic. The hero decided to use vital conversion and successfully made the monster stagger, but the monster attacked him, and the hero knew that if the attack hit him, it would destroy his shield completely, leaving him unprotected. Yet he decided to let himself be hit by the attack to use the damage as strength and then use vital conversion to unleash his abilities to the maximum, creating a burst of light that struck the monster. After a few seconds, everyone waited to see what would happen. Then they heard Marius laughing because the battle was indeed as exciting as he had hoped, and they had hurt him quite badly. Nevertheless, he was glad to be defeated and permitted to do whatever they wanted, though it wouldn't be settled completely unless they ended his life. The hero approached Marius because that wasn't what he wanted. Instead, he asked if he knew about the secret treasure that could grant wishes. That's what he was looking for because he needed to help someone, and Marius casually pulled it out of his pocket, saying, "Ah yes, here it is," and handed it over. Marius said the stone could perform miracles and just needed to give it direction and voice the wish. After that, the stone would shatter. After explaining, he asked Ruth to end his life. The hero thanked him for the stone and explained that he didn't want to kill him because he wanted Marius to remain the guardian of the labyrinth as it was very helpful to the village inhabitants. Marius was surprised to hear that and delighted because it felt like teamwork, something he accepted because he enjoyed working with strong fighters and hoped to one day have revenge. The hero arrived home and talked to his younger sister. Then he showed her the stone he had tried so hard to obtain. Manisha was surprised to see the treasure and didn't want to accept it because she felt the hero should use it for whatever he wanted. The hero replied that if she used it, the result would be the same because he wanted the best for his sister. Manisha thanked him and began voicing her wishes to the rune, asking for what she desired most in her life. The stone glowed, and after a few seconds, the hero asked if she felt any different. Manisha said she felt more energetic because previously she couldn't move or jump around much due to being out of breath. The hero couldn't bear to see her like that and hugged his younger sister because he had never seen her so radiant and happy. He felt very happy because finally, after much effort, the adventure had succeeded in saving her, as he had even thought he would lose his life before he could save her. Ruth was glad that nothing he had done up to this point in his life was a mistake, and finally, he could see his younger sister in good health. Manisha was very grateful for not leaving her alone and always being there with her. The next day, Ruth received a visit from Marius, who informed him that from that day on, he would be the labyrinth keeper, which confused Ruth greatly. After receiving the news, Ruth refused Marius's offer and dedicated himself to his duties as the leader of the clan. However, these tasks were not easy due to ongoing clashes between the clans in the city. Ruth did the best he could but felt he needed more help. He returned to the location where his clan's headquarters were and spoke with the girls who assisted him to try to find ways to recruit more people. Nin responded that they indeed needed more people due to the shortage of personnel to keep the clan strong. Ruth didn't know who else to ask for help because Manisha handled the administration and all external relations of the clan, while Lily and her twin brother refused to participate or train more people. Although they were the ones who suggested allying with other clans to minimize conflicts among them, to achieve this, they had to offer something in return because other clans would surely want to gain benefits as well. Ruth realized this but didn't know what to offer, which is why he talked to Nin. Ruth explained that for now, his clan only had combat strength, but this wouldn't be of much use to offer to other clans because they needed to start bringing in more participants. Nina then said that he was doing the right thing and should trust him because the clan would grow quickly, even telling Ruth that if needed, she could offer to promote the clan, which would attract more adventurers. However, Ruth immediately rejected that option. At that moment, they were interrupted by Marius, who returned asking Ruth to lead the labyrinth. Ruth said he wouldn't do it for the second time, and Marius decided he would join the clan because he wanted to help stop the fighting in the city. Ruth wasn't sure if Marius was wandering around the city as usual and asked if he didn't hold any grudge against humans. Marius stared at them for a few seconds, causing some tension, but then he laughed and said he had no issues and just wanted to help. Therefore, he proposed that if Ruth took care of the labyrinth, he would help control the fighting and even join the clan. Ruth asked what he should do because he needed help, and Marius was so enthusiastic that he called him to explain the tasks in the labyrinth even though Ruth hadn't agreed to anything yet. Ruth arrived at the labyrinth with Marius. The labyrinth led them through a portal to where they controlled everything. They saw a bed and near it was a well. Marius explained that from this place, they could see all parts of the labyrinth and control what happened inside. Additionally, Marius showed some screens displaying points and explained that with these, they could summon monsters inside the labyrinth. Each monster consumed a certain number of points obtained over time in battle and how many shields they managed to take from the adventurers. The hero was surprised and thought that if he used his shield to be destroyed by the monster, he could quickly level up the labyrinth. Marius acknowledged that it could be a good idea and showed how to summon some monsters. However, the hero reprimanded him because he summoned monsters too close to the adventurers, and they were scared. Marius said he could summon various types of monsters and even over time gain their trust, making them help and act on command. There were also other monsters currently locked because they required a lot of points, but they could also summon monsters randomly every so often, so Marius let the hero summon them this time. Ruth touched the screen and a slime emerged from the well, immediately gaining the trust of our hero, making him surprised and thinking that this way it wouldn't be too difficult to get S-ranked monsters because many adventurers only came for dinosaurs. However, if they got higher ranked monsters, the village economy would improve. While the hero was thinking, the commerce slime turned out not to like what was being thought and attacked our hero, throwing him far away. Marius was surprised because this gave them a lot of points, and the hero thanked the slime because now he had a new idea. He told Marius that he would manage the labyrinth, although not at that moment because he had other matters to attend to first. Nereus agreed and let the slime accompany the hero because the slime didn't want to part with him. After that, the hero arrived home, and the girls were surprised when he came with the slime. But the hero quickly explained that the slime was friendly and would not attack them. The girls felt relieved and began to observe the slime closely. They were fascinated by how cute it was. Manisha commented that if they were going to keep it as a pet, they should give it a name. The hero agreed and decided to call it Lime, a name liked by the monster and the girls. That night, representatives from the two largest clans in the kingdom rejected the hero's offer to become allies. Some of them referred to the hero's clan as a peasant clan. However, they decided to invite him to be part of a dance party they would hold soon. That same night, the hero told the others about the letters he received from those clans, and as he suspected, they rejected the idea of becoming allies but offered to let the hero join their clan if he provided Nin as compensation.